Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security Confidential. Today, we have another fantastic guest who really doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to be kind to him and give him one anyways. He is Chris Rock. You guys have probably seen him at DEFCON many a times. He's the author of The Baby Harvest. You know, Chris is a cyber mercenary. He's presented at DEFCON 3 times. He has been in cybersecurity for 30 years, and that kind of tells you the level of experience he had before things were so readily available. He was out there in the field trying to protect organizations, advising governments and private organizations on how to do things right. Chris is passionate about raising the public's awareness on modern cybersecurity threats and trends, and we are honored to have him. We really want to hear what he has to say. So Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here this early morning in your neck of the woods.
Thank you for having me. A great introduction. You should be my publicist.
But I got to start off with this. A simple question here, man. Your name belongs to you're famous in cybersecurity, but it belongs to a world famous celebrity out there. How the hell did you get away with this? Like, you publish on social media and whatnot. I mean, a lot of times those platforms flag you and they say, hey, you can't use celebrity names. What's the story here?
Yeah, so it gives me great benefits too. So when I'm checking into a hotel and I get upgrades without even doing anything, just by the name, I go through airports really easy until I actually see the photo and do the match, and I go Chris Rock, and it just puts the security person on the E, so that I don't get any questions because they're just laughing because they see a white guy going through. I also have the benefit of his middle name is Jay, and my middle name is Jay, so Chris.
Oh my God.
I get his frequent flyer points on occasions as well.
Well, he's got to be in God mode, so I hope you're not paying for airline tickets.
No, every time he does a trip to Europe, sometimes I'll get his flight points. It's like fantastic. It's like, I'm not going to argue with
that. And that's the thing when you're not cross-referencing and cross-checking and looking and scrutinizing those identities. These kinds of things can happen, but good for you, man.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's great. He flies first class, so all the better for me.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, there's no way you're getting stuck in the back of the bus.
No way. No way.
So, which brings us, I mean, that's a threat to society, but give us your 3 imminent cyber threats to modern society. I'm curious what your take is on that.
Okay, so imminent. For me, cybersecurity, imminent. I'm not going to give you imminent, but I'll do it in my definition of an imminent. I think the boringest one is cybersecurity shortage, just in terms of skilled staff. And I'm not talking about entry level security staff, but I'm talking about experienced. And I'm talking 10 years plus in our industry, because as a criminal, and I look at this, that there's been a deficiency in staff, which means there's a deficiency in systems, and then all of a sudden you're getting what's probably even worse than having nobody, someone who's got no idea, who are then setting up systems with, not much experience, and they're making errors. So a bit of background on that. I was IT before I was security. So I used to look at the mistakes I made as a guy that didn't know much, and then put my hacker hat on, and then I could then just go through. It's like, I ticked that box because it was easier. I didn't encrypt encryption because it was quicker. I just wanted to test to see if it worked first, and never turned it on, because once things work, don't stuff with something that works. So I think that would be my first thing. And that's what I'd call imminent. That's what we're seeing right now. Second would be AI. I think AI is going to be a huge, and I don't want to sound like an alarmist, and there's a lot of people being alarmist, but as a hacker, I look at AI and think, this is awesome. This is going to cause absolute havoc on our industry, absolute havoc to automate things. For example, if I want to set up a private equity firm with banks around me, and that used to be a manual task. I used to have to, set up a fake website, fake pictures, I had to make brochures, and I had to make it look real. And that was, that might have taken me 3 or 4 weeks to set up. Using AI, I can then automate that whole function of set up, reciprocating banks, fake banks, PE firms, legal firms that, vet my PE firm, private equity firm, and stuff like that. So I see AI is huge from a criminal point of view. And I like it to Bitcoin. When you look at Bitcoin, it started off as Bitcoin was a science experiment. It was something created by, we don't know whether it was one person or a group of, MIT
Okay.
engineers or physicists.
Right.
And
There's
then
some
it then
controversy there.
evolved. Yeah, and then exactly, and then it evolved into what criminals used to be used because credit cards and moving money is a pain in the ass, but you could then buy things illegally with Bitcoin or ransoms and stuff like that. And then it moved into the investment world, and that happened over a period of 15, 20 years. So that we've seen that cycle go from science to essentially JP Morgan and BlackRock, and everything in the middle was criminal, and well, I was just going to say criminal. And we're going to see the same with AI. And we're right at the start of AI, and then we're going to see the criminals take over, and then we're going to see, a functional product thereafter. That would be my number two for threats.
Now, so give us some. You just highlighted an example where you can use AI to create essentially an identity and then validate that identity through a whole bunch of automation. As I was listening to let's create a company, then let's verify the company, let's give that company ratings, let's make it seem completely legit, and you're off to the races. But in what other ways do you think that especially generative AI is going to come in and make a play before we
Well,
get to
and
the third
that's
one?
really good. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So I'm what you call hyper focused. So if I see a deficiency with AI, or for me it's a compliment that make my work easier, then I'll focus solely on that factor. I haven't looked at the other factors, to be honest. That for me, that is the quick auto click. I've got, like you said, I've got a complete trust model: lawyers, websites, media, reviews, automatic phone calls, all that sort of stuff, and replies and all that sort of stuff. I have not looked at the other side of AI. This is essentially 3 or 4 years worth of research that you would have to look at the attack vectors with AI.
That's
What do you think?
fantastic. I'm thinking, a simple one that comes to mind is CAPTCHAs. I can get generative AI to defeat the CAPTCHAs. You look at the number of processes that's engaged with. Now you just created a gap.
Yep, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yep,
And I
that's a
haven't
great
really
model.
put a lot of thought. I really don't think the human imagination has caught up with what the
You're
possibilities here are.
you are spot on. You are spot on, and that's why you're gonna get two. You got three groups of people. You're gonna have people who say AI is not a threat. I can't see it as a threat. It's in its infancy, and then you're going to get people who are going to go the other way, like the doomsday says, and then you're going to get the people in the middle. So I gravitate to not doomsday, but I see it as a. You asked about imminent threats, and I think that is one of the highest threats that we have.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of talk about there's a lot of saber rattling on regulation. I'm not so sure that with AI legislation is going to. This genie's out of the bottle, man.
It's gone. It's the
Yeah,
Bitcoin analogy. It's like let's go with Bitcoin, and you've seen how long they've taken to wrap some essentially some security around that by allowing EFTs and stuff like that. That was a long journey to watch companies like FTX and all that sort of stuff go broke. And get Japanese Bitcoin holders just everyone's just hackers stole the money. I think it was Mount Gox and stuff like that. Like we've watched that, and there's been no regulation at all.
oh, absolutely. So number three. So that was number two. Sorry to take you on a tangent there.
No, you're right. And the reason I used I was imminent, but it's not really imminent, is quantum computing. I think if we can get quantum computing to a state where you and I can use the system, and I'm not saying at home, but I'm saying as a hacker could get into, say, a university that's trialing quantum computing, and a hacker can then use quantum computing and AI combined. I think that would be huge. And I look for things in history where you get two things combining, where you essentially you're not looking you're looking for a pattern. And I want to see quantum and AI. Essentially, AI's got the jump on quantum, but if you can just envisage 15 years down the track when AI is mature and quantum is essentially usable, then I think those two together is going to be brilliant for both hackers and cybersecurity people.
I don't know that it'll even take that long. I mean, if you look at where we came from in the early 80s to today with computational power, is there any
I
reason to
agree.
believe that we're not going to see the same kind of acceleration in both AI and in quantum computing? And you know, the interesting thing, Chris, with quantum is if you look at the number of algorithms that depend on the difficulty a computer has to factor, you know, there's no easy way for a computer to create factors, to, you know, come up with the primes of numbers.
A large number multiplied
A
together. Yep.
very large number. I mean, that's the foundation of encryption, modern day
Correct.
encryption, right? But it goes beyond that. Quantum computing has the ability, potentiality to actually render those things extremely obsolete. And
Agree.
what will that do to all the many processes that depend on it? So
Agree. What about in things like the finance sector and stuff like that, with algorithms
yeah,
doing like share prediction and stuff like that?
that's right. And I don't know that you're in touch with industry quite a bit. Is there any focus out there on people looking at that already, other than I think the US federal government put out, you know, a directive to agencies that should be looking at quantum resistant encryption methods.
Yeah.
But
So to answer your question and answer it crudely, everyone just talks shit. So they'll use the words, resistance and all that sort of stuff. But you and I both know that nothing's really happening because it's way too early. We can't even get on top of, well, the government can't even get on top of events of today, like security attack vectors of today, let alone the future. So the answer, in my view, is nothing at all. Nothing substantial, anyway.
uh, yeah, and you know, the technology isn't even accessible for so many people to even try out different
I
methods and
agree.
schemes, and to see what's going to happen. But I do absolutely believe that probably inside of a decade, 10, 15 years out, that technology will be, it may not be available to us at the desktop. Certainly, maybe 30 years out, it may very well be available on a phone or on a desktop. Who knows? But it's going to present challenges that we have not seen before. But one thing interesting, when we looked at just some of the things that you've discussed in the past, one common thread that runs through it all is you're looking for, as an ethical hacker, a flaw in a process. You're mapping out processes, and then you're meticulously and systematically interrogating each step of that process to find flaws. Why is it that that same mode of thinking doesn't apply to the defensive side of the equation in companies and organizations today, where they should be looking at the type of businesses they conduct and what vectors they may really be vulnerable to, and make sure that they're doing their best to design flaws out? Because you still see today breach after breach after breach on a daily basis at companies that have
It's a
immense
great
cybersecurity departments.
That's a great question, and I think it comes down to the way I do my research. Is I trust nobody, so I don't trust any statement that's put in front of me. I mean, I was speaking to somebody about private equity firms, and we're talking about things like bank licenses and SEC and all that sort of stuff. And someone made the statement to me, but it's SEC regulated. Now, when I hear it's SEC regulated, for me that means nothing. That's just a bunch of words to try to put me off what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So I don't trust a single word that comes out. Well, I say I don't trust any word that comes out of anyone's mouth or book needs to be, I'll put a legal hat on. It needs to be researched and studied on. Why do you say that? And the reason I say that is you and I go into a bank and they ask you for 100 points of identification, birth certificate, driver's license, and then the person at the back of the counter essentially just ticks a couple of boxes, and then all of a sudden you've got a bank account. And you and I were talking off camera about driver's licenses. To get a driver's license is, to forgery of a driver's license is difficult, but there's ways around even that. And that's, for me, for
Yeah.
someone like that, if I was trying to get a fake driver's license, I wouldn't even bother trying to get a fake driver's license. I'd get a real one. So I would get, off the dark web, I'd go and get a Swedish passport, a Swedish driver's license, and then I'd go into the DMV and say, "Hey, I'm in your country legally for the next 2 years. Give me a driver's license." And all of a sudden, I have an American driver's license. It's the same in Australia. So I then didn't get to travel around with a real one. So Going back to your original statement, I trust nobody. And when someone has it like a tick box that you need to go through, like to do a banking license, you need to do ABC. And for me, I'll then go through ABC, and that's how I analyze it. You ask why people don't do that. I think it's just once someone says something to you, an inherent trust, and I don't trust anything that's said to me.
Well, and I think there's and disagree with me if you think I'm on the wrong track
Yeah.
here, but there's this mentality in our industry that InfoSec is about technology. And there's a huge focus on technology. I mean, you read all the rags and it's always about new products. Gartner's putting out reviews on their quadrants, and, analysts are talking about the latest and greatest things. It's rare that you actually hear people talk about process, which is at the heart of this conversation, right?
You're spot on, and it's hence why myself and other researchers are being so successful is no one looks at process. And don't get me started on the Gartner model. Don't even get me started on the Gartner model. The pay to play.
We should
Gartner
trade some
model
notes
is
here
ridiculous. Oh my god!
No, we should trade some. Yeah,
the Gartner model. For those who don't know, the Gartner model is, Chris, you've got a product that you would like in the Gartner review. Pay us $50,000 a year for the next 3 years. We can't guarantee you'll actually be in the Gartner report, but you've got a good chance. I mean, we talk about cyber criminals. That is as criminal as you can freaking get.
That is. And you know what? It's an opportunity. If I'm a well-funded bad actor, why haven't I put out a product? Maybe I should put out a legit product that's completely got holes out the wazoo for my convenience and get it put in the upper right-hand quadrant of the Gartner report.
150 grand and the 3-year waiting period. Knock yourself out, mate. Go for it.
Well, if I'm knocking over companies for $40 million in ransom, 150 grand doesn't seem that bad. That's just cost of doing business.
You've sold me. It's an investment.
It's an investment. And then I can throw that switch whenever I want. But it really, and I'm dead serious about that, is that we talk to so many organizations. And it's almost like, I guess something that all our listeners would probably be able to relate to is back in the old days when everybody had a camera, you'd always get the odd guy, what kind of camera do you have? Is Canon better? Is Nikon better? Well, it was never about the camera. Those brilliant images were all about the photographer. It was about process. It had very little to do with the device in their hand. You could take the greatest photographer, give them a pile of shit camera, and they would produce brilliant art. Right? It's the process.
You're spot on. Yeah, spot on. And you look at all the cybersecurity conferences now, which there's essentially there's 300, 400, 500 per year. There's people doing great talks, but no one's analyzing those talks. And there's some really good talks, even at small conferences and large conferences, that you think, holy crap, these guys are onto something. But there's no media around it, and it just becomes an archival, a talk. And because people just don't have the time, because there's always something new coming. Black Hat, B-Sides, DEFCON, and then there's all the other local events.
Is it laziness, apathy, or indifference? What's causing the industry to not actually look at this in the right way?
I don't think, and you may disagree with me. I don't think there's enough skilled people in our profession. I think we are bottom heavy with people who have got that basic skill and intermediate skill, and the skilled people, the 10 plus veterans, there's not enough out there. And if you then think, well, there's 1,000 out there, or 10,000 out there, that's still a low number in our profession. When you think of a doctor and you think of doctors who have had 10 years plus experience, there's, multi-hundred thousand, like in the US alone, because they've been doing it forever. They don't do talks when they're 22 or 24 as soon as they come out of medicine. They do the talks in their 50s and 60s. So I think it's apathy, but I think there's not enough skill in our industry at all.
Well, that, you may be onto a strong point, because one of the things that we've even struggled with at our company is always getting are hands on a great architect. And those people are rare. And if you get a good one, you keep them and you hold on to them at all costs, right?
Great. And when you're asking for an architect, what are you looking for? If pretend you're, your recruiter, what are you looking for in an architect?
I'm looking for someone that understands how information flows, and therefore they can understand how to control that flow, regardless of the type of information it may be. At the end of it, we're transmitting TCP/IP packets of some kind or another, so that are carrying instruction sets. I want gated controls on those instruction sets, but in the context of the way in which we execute business. So if someone is going to craft a defense in depth strategy for us that's going to be viable, they must necessarily understand what the revenue chain looks like, how that
Yep.
connects to the supply chain, and how that's connected to third-party risk. And then they can start crafting a multi-layered defensive architecture that
You're
might
spot on. And then you go.
yeah, I say then you're now at a point where you can start prescribing an approach as to how to craft a spider web that might catch some flies that could kill you. That's my
And at
thought.
what age do you think? Yeah, it's a great thought, and you've articulated it really well. And I'll say on top of that, you're looking for somebody who understands commercial gains, understands the end user, that whole process. What we can mitigate, because the business is always going to come to you and say, "Well, we accept the risk," and then you've got to come up with a supporting architecture around that. Those risk ratings. That level of experience, how many years experience do you think to really captures that in your mind?
Oh wow. Probably 10 to 15 years easy, because you have to have
Agree.
been around the block in different roles.
Correct. Correct.
You can't just
Correct.
be an IT guy or a cybersecurity person. You should have done something else. At least you should have touched
Correct.
some other parts of a business to understand a business. How does it actually function?
Correct. Someone to create a billing and materials, a high level design, a detailed design, business case documents that they don't fall off trees. Then that's why it's so hard to get somebody like that.
Well, I didn't ever think of it in that context, but you stating it that way makes a lot of sense. And framing it that way, we have a dramatic shortage of talent then.
Correct. And I was an architect myself, so I've been in the banking sector, so I know what I had to do in that arena. Thinking you can't go to a boot camp for 6 weeks, or what was a bartender now doing SOC analyst, and now you want to be a security architect. It doesn't work that way, and I don't want to disenfranchise anyone in the industry, because there's a lot of newcomers that will be in your audiences. It's a long haul. You guys are going to be here for 30 years plus. Just don't expect to be the guru in the first, 5 to 10 years, but after 10 plus years, the industry is your oyster.
That's very true. And that comes with a handsome paycheck too.
It does. And the beauty of that, and then you know what you're doing. You're not in a role where you're thinking, yeah, I don't belong here. Like, I don't belong. You actually do belong, because you have got the experience to back it up. And then you'll give your client or your contract what they're looking for. Someone who knows to put their hand on their heart, pen on paper, saying, this will fix your problem. That's experience.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree
A
more.
lot will disagree.
So you mentioned talks. I got to ask you, you were asked to speak at TED Global and you declined. What's the backstory here? If you can share, I don't know.
Yeah, so I actually didn't decline. So I didn't decline it. I got, for a better word, terminated from speaking at TED. So
Oh, really?
I was asked this. Yeah, I got terminated. So I had been accepted to speak at TED Global in New York. And I'd gone through everything. I'd gone through legal review. I was talking about Cyber Mercenary, so it was a cool topic and something that
Okay.
dear to my heart. And we went through, like I said, legal review. I actually did practice speeches in front of the whole TED crew, and they said, "Look, the material you're presenting to us was stuff that you did in about 2012. Have you done anything recently?" And I said, "Oh, nothing that I can talk about." And they said, "Well, how can you show the audience how good you really are?" And I said, "Leave it with me." And in that period of time, in about a week's time, I hacked into all the TED organizers and presented back to them everything I found in their lives, their credit history, the works, where they'd lived, where their parents lived, the whole everything. Now, they weren't too impressed with that. And then my talk was abruptly terminated at that point. So
Oh,
I didn't decline.
well,
I was terminated.
well, share with us some of how did you do it?
So that's for me. That's my normal role. Like I'm either a pen tester or I'm a hacker. I use the two interchangeably. So for me, that's the easy stuff. Like I troll through databases of credentials that are already stolen, then I just grab username passwords that already exist, and then I essentially go from no user access to God mode in their lives. Usually, what I call penetrating the circles of their lives. So targeting their friends and their relatives and their workmates, and then getting through to them that way.
Well, I'm sure people listening to this are thinking, man, that guy is deadly. He could really.
Well, they asked me a silly question. I mean, ask a hacker talking about Cyber Mercenary to show how good you are. What did they want me to do? Like go and hack Mitsubishi and show you the evidence? I mean,
Yeah.
You play with a scorpion, you're going to get bitten. That's what I say.
That's absolutely fair. You ask a sniper how good they are. They could put somebody out at over 1.6 kilometers. What did you expect?
Exactly. So I've got a talk ready to go. I don't know how I'll deliver that talk, whether it be future TED or future Dark Diaries or whatever. But I have a talk ready to go.
Oh, yeah, please do deliver it. I think all of yours are so entertaining and highly informative that it's just you bring a lot of things out in daylight that are often not discussed. And I keep looking back at process, and we keep harping, process. Look at the process. Involve the people. Get them to understand what they can do wrong and tell them why. Just don't put out policies say that you can't do this. Tell them why and show them how you can actually really get screwed over if you do something. And you'll get people to play along, and now you'll be a much safer organization. But it always seems to be about tech. Do you have the latest MFA? Have you put in a zero trust framework? Have you like, all right, that's great, but have you looked at your processes that actually make you what you are? And
And that comes down to lack of experience. That comes to the vendor is the tail wagging the dog. The vendor is crapping on at a black hat conference, to zero trust. And I say we collectively, we think that these words are important to our group because we don't have the experience to say, shut the fuck up and just let us do our thing. We don't need your vendor bullshit in the middle. Well, let's just focus as a group on what's important to us and don't have the vendor wagging the dog.
Oh man, I love it. Right there is worth the price of admission for everybody that's listening. You've heard it from the man himself. If there's nothing else, you guys who listen, get out of this. Kind of follows Chris's methodology. At least take a paper and pencil, write out your process that you're trying to guard, and then try and poke holes in the damn thing. And that might be way better.
Totally. I mean, I see people's career is analyzing new articles that are in the news cycle and then talking shit about them on Twitter, and they think that's their value add to the industry. I mean, all you're doing is collecting stuff together and then presenting. There is a forum for that, but that's not a career path. I mean, if you want to do, research solid stuff, analyze a topic of interest. It may not be sexy, it may not be, but follow your passion, and you'll find, as you said, the process flaws in that system.
That's phenomenal.